Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Katie Croy, consultant from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and today we're very privileged to have Jane Foltz with us. She'll be presenting a webinar on how to use technology successfully in the classroom. Jane is a faculty advisor to teacher candidates in the CalState TEACH program, which is a statewide blended teacher credential program based in the CSU system. Jane's expertise and the focus for today's webinar is instructional technology integration across all grade levels. Thank you, Jane, for creating this presentation, and we do hope that each of you will truly enjoy this and have information that you'll be able to use in the future to work with your candidates and then your candidates with their students in the classrooms. We hope that you will find this helpful, and if you have additional webinars and topics that you would like to see presented, please let us know. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Jane. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Katie, Dr. Croy, and thanks also to Jake Schuler, who's helping us on the tech side today. So this is my topic, and I thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to speak to you in the audience today on the topic, my favorite topic, of ed tech. And then we're going to talk specifically how it's related to teacher training and the Cal TPA. So I should mention right up front that I'm not a trained assessor. Nor am I an expert on all things tech, but I do hope that I have some ideas that will be helpful to those listening as we train our candidates to integrate tech in a meaningful way. And more specifically, I would like to hope to help the audience think creatively about technology and this assessment without stress. So let's get started. So EdTech and Cal TPA. Whoops, what's the point? So that's something Dr. Croy and I came up with when we were trying to find a way to focus this talk today. So that is the question, what's the point? So these are topics that we'll be talking about today. What does Cal TPA expect from candidates? Why? How to think about making good and appropriate ed tech decisions. We'll be talking about a few tools for your consideration, and we'll have some examples of per the rubric, the Cal TPA rubric of tech integration. And hopefully there'll be some tips on how to not feel overwhelmed to pass on to your candidates. All right. So there are two big questions that I will cover, and I wanted to say right up front that I will be covering these because I know they're of great interest to people. And these two big burning questions are, what if tech is limited or non-existent at my site? And what if I teach the littlest littles in K through 2? So that doesn't mean that we won't be talking about things that are applicable across all grades, all the way through high school. All right. So the Cal TPA does set a really high bar for brand new teachers as they enter the profession. And this is because our new teacher performance expectations, the TPEs, are asking a lot of our candidates right out of the gate. So for those of us who are steeped in educational technology, this is a welcome change and we embrace it wholeheartedly. But we have to also recognize that for others, it represents quite a sea change that might not feel so comfortable. So a question my favorite tech guru, Alice Keeler, always asks, how comfortable are you being uncomfortable? Because when you use technology, especially as you're just learning to use it or you're using something new, you can feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you have to sort of embrace that feeling and know that it's okay and you're going to get through it. And you and your candidates are modeling problem solving and how to keep your composure and always have a plan B as we learn putting this presentation together today. Okay, so what do the TPEs say new teachers should be able to do? It says beginning teachers need to be able to design, implement, and evaluate tech-rich learning environments. So this is quite a change, and there are implications for programs in this language. Tech is not something we're just adding on to the end of something we might be putting together for students. It's not something we say to ourselves, oh, today I have to integrate tech. Or we don't want the TPA to be an instance where we say, oh, I've got to integrate tech. And it's not something that you do all the time. So the TPEs themselves are telling candidates, you're going to create a classroom ecosystem, an environment in which tech is a lively and important part. So the TPEs also say that, excuse me, beginning teachers can integrate what they know about their subject and what they know about teaching with tech tools that are available in order to engage and support all students in learning, improve conceptual understanding, cultivate critical thinking, promote creative learning, and more, provide personalized tech-rich lessons, promote digital literacy, offer multiple means to demonstrate learning, offer multiple means of assessment. So that can seem quite daunting, but one point to be really clear about when the CalTPA talks about technology, they are talking about digital or virtual technology. I was at an implementation meeting for the CalTPA, and folks in the room were suggesting that this might be an example of technology. And people who don't teach children how to form letters might not recognize this as a pencil grip. It's sort of an adaptive tool that helps some children with the fine motor issues. But while this is a wonderful thing, it's not the kind of technology CalTPA is asking for. It is neither digital nor virtual. So we just need to be clear about that. And to talk today is not about apps. If you were to Google best classroom apps for teachers in high school or middle school or any grade level, you would get massive lists. Those can be daunting and overwhelming and actually lead to a lot of fear about using technology, like it's just too much. So there's a way to look at integrating technology that's going to help us make thoughtful choices. So we're not going to start with the app. We're going to start with thinking about our thinking. How are we approaching technology integration in the classroom? And again, there are implications for programs and student placements because the TPEs and the TPA is asking so much, and it's a good thing. So here's my favorite way of looking at educational technology integration. And it's called the PIC-RAT matrix. And it was developed by a professor at, Brigham Young University. And if you Google PIC-RAT, you'll find this if you want to explore it further. What's good about this, and in our program, CalState TEACH, we use this throughout our program. We introduce it right in the very first weeks because we want our students thinking about tech use in this way. And it asks a teacher to ask themselves two questions. The first is, what is the student's relationship to technology? And that's the PIC part here on the side. Are they passive, as in listening to an audiobook? Are they interacting with the technology, or are they creating with technology? And then the other part of the equation is what's happening to the teacher's use of technology in terms of changes to their traditional practice. Is tech use just replacing something they've always done? And a lot of times there's value added with that. The very clear example is replacing a typewriter with a word processor. It's pretty much the same functionality, but there's a lot of value added to the word processor because very, very few people at any sort of professional setting are using typewriters anymore. So that's an example of replacement. Or is your practice amplifying? Is it becoming bigger? Can you do more? Or is your practice transformed? So the combinations of letters describe what the student is doing and what the teacher's doing. Most teachers, as they start to integrate technology, are down here in the passive replacement section, and that's just fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all, because again, there's value added to a learning process. But the more comfortable one becomes with technology, the more you move to the upper right, where students are creating. They are producers of digital media instead of just consumers. And that's a really big difference. And your practice, the teacher's practice, is transformed because you're doing something you literally couldn't do without technology. So that's a lot to think about, but this switches the whole way of thinking about tech. We're not starting with, hey, this is a cool app, how can I use it? And it's very tempting to think that way because technology is just a ton of fun. But when we're talking about integrating tech in a thoughtful way, we start with the teaching and we start with the impact on our practice. So again, these are the questions you ask yourself as a teacher. What is the student's interaction with the tech? And what is happening to the teacher's traditional practice? So here's an example of a very familiar classroom piece of technology. Ceiling mounted projector is fantastic. I wish I'd had one in the classroom. And its value here really depends on what you're projecting and what's you're asking students to do with what you're projecting. But I think we can see here that probably this piece of technology is pretty passive in terms of what the students are doing. And I don't think it's transforming anyone's teaching, but again, there are endless possibilities on any form of technology. But I bring this up because my students, when they turn in lesson plans, we have a place where we'll ask them, what technology are you using with your students? And what technology are your students using? Very often they will just tell me they're using a document camera or a smart board. And smart boards can be wonderfully interactive, but that's not what we have in mind for our candidates. They need to go farther. So they'll get a comment back from me about how can your students use technology to achieve or demonstrate your learning goal. So let's contrast that with this use of student technology. My candidate is there on the left, and the technology is not in his hands. Students are using it, and they are making decisions. They're collaborating. They're by themselves dragging and dropping a series of commands for a robot to perform a certain task that they've been set. So that's the difference, and this is where we want to get, and when we use technology in a transformative way. So again, this is just another example, and the beauty of the PIC-RAT matrix is it lets you think about these things and how the two important questions. So Dr. Croy and I were talking, for example, about, well, this is a virtual field trip from National Geographic, and it's going to beam an explorer, someone working in the field somewhere in the world, directly into your classroom. And hopefully you will be interacting with this person and asking questions and seeing them in their context. So we talked about, the value of this really depends on the level of interaction children are having. What's the difference between watching a National Geographic video and interacting with someone live in person online who's doing the work that you might be talking about? So that's a really big difference. And that's the kind of conversation you want to have with your candidates as they start to think about What's the value added when I'm talking about using technology with students when my time is so valuable as is theirs? And, whoops, here's another example of a Skype-a-thon where you, over the certain period of time, you can connect with children in any other part of the world. That is, can be mind-opening, and of course you would set a purpose for that, but this is an example of very transformative, I think, to my mind, use of technology. This is Desmos, which is a fantastic math web app. They call it a graphing calculator, and it can do lots of amazing things. And I'll just show you just a little bit about it.
Shifts the focus from my original segment to this new result. This is where the power of transformations really shines, and why we've decided to separate the actions of defining and applying. With just one more click, I can generate a new image. 5 more clicks, and my octagon is nearly complete. Let's use the polygon tool to finish things up. So there it is, using rotation to construct a regular octagon. All right, let's take a look at a second demo, this time focusing on reflection. My goal is to build something similar to what you see here. First, let's define a polygon as our pre-image. Next, let's define the line of symmetry. And now, hop over to the Transform tab where we can select and define a reflection. And finally, select an object to transform, and then click Apply.
So that's an amazing, amazing tool. It's free, and there are interactive lessons. You can find lessons from grade 4 and up through high school. It's not just geometry. There's a lot of graphing though. And what the beauty of it is the child setting the parameters for whatever it is they're talking about. What happens if I change the y-intercept of something, or the x-intercept, or the slope? With a push of a button, you can see right in front of your eyes what the effects of those changes are. So it's pretty amazing, and I've seen it used with great effect at the middle school level, and I'm sure it would work in high school and upper elementary as well. It's fantastic. And okay, and here's an example from their website, the Desmos website again, where, sorry, I have to move my screen here. We invite, where a teacher is noted as describing her use of Desmos. My students loved the polygraph today. One of the first times students asked me for academic vocabulary, they had the need to communicate more clearly. So this is an interactive use of Desmos where students are paired up. One student picks a graph and answers questions. The other asks the questions and tries to identify the chosen graph. So both students see the need for the robust academic vocabulary in play. Another super friendly, very creative app, and all of the apps I'm talking about, I have no affiliation with, but these are apps that are not new. They're constantly improving and becoming more robust and offering more to teachers. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about today. So Estimation 180 has amazing activities, and they're improving their actual collection of lessons where students can make estimates, and then as you go through the program, it shows you the answer, but you yourself have gone through a lot of problem-solving steps. It starts with very simple, here's a picture of a person standing next to a fence. Based on what you know about the world, how tall is this person? So it's working on number sense, reasoning. Your children, students will talk about their thinking. And again, it's a lovely warm-up. estimation is and number sense are key skills, obviously in math. Okay, so News ELA is free and it's just a wonderful thing. It does truly offer fresh adaptive reads in every subject at most grade levels. And the beautiful thing about it is the articles are written on very, very current events. And with a push of a button, the student can change the reading level, the lexile level of the text that they're reading, the informational text. So that is fantastic because students can access the same content without a barrier of not being able to read possibly at grade level, etc. You can still do the thinking and the talking involved in confronting informational text. And this is a screenshot. It's not very easy to read, but this again is from News ELA and latest news. I mean, this is about the spelling bee that was just a few days ago, for example. It's very current and up to date. High interest stories, but you can see that a teacher can select their level of their students and the text level and even the skills that the text is focusing on. These are the things that a particular text would allow you to explore. So it's an incredibly powerful tool and kids love it. I actually used it with my own students quite a few years ago, but again, this is something that's constantly improving. Okay, so let's talk quickly about universal design for learning. That is another big sea change in the new TPEs and thus in the TPA. And the Cal TPA is asking students to show that they know what it means to offer multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. And I think, to my mind, technology is education's curb cut. It offers us an on-ramp to things that might have posed as a barrier before. So News ELA is an example of that. Just one of many. All right. So what is Cal TPA asking of our students? What evidence do they have to provide? So there is one entire rubric and step 2 of cycle 2 that has to do with educational technology. The essential question being, how does the candidate incorporate educational technology to provide opportunities for students to achieve and or demonstrate the content-specific learning goals? So as with any rubric, when we look from one level to the next, when we look at what distinguishes any given level, we see clues about what's expected. So a level 1, their candidate does not provide there are no opportunities for students to either use or access technology. At level 2, the candidate is presenting information in a one-to-many learning environment, meaning just his or her or their laptop is in the room. But still, the purpose is to enable students to achieve or demonstrate the learning goal. At level 3, students themselves have opportunities to use, not just access, but use technology. And at level 4, it gets a whole lot longer because students are allowed a choice of a range of tools to achieve or demonstrate the learning goal. And they also use tools to collaborate. Level 5 is pretty amazing. That's where the students themselves are knowledgeable enough about tech to independently make choices about how to meet a certain learning goal. So that is the ultimate. And then what's interesting when you look at this is what's different from level to level is not necessarily the candidate's use. The candidate is just providing. It's what are the students doing. And in that way, it really mirrors the PIC-RAT matrix, because the student use becomes more sophisticated and transformative as you go across the levels. So this is ThingLink, and this is free. And there are many uses for this. Actually, I mean, infinite. The sky is the limit. So I just created a ThingLink image here for you. And if you click this, here's an example of something at a level 2, to my mind. And again, I'm not a trained scorer, but this is where the candidate is just presenting something. So say we're starting to read The Grapes of Wrath. So I might just show them this image. I just project it and have them make inferences about the time and place and the people, just based on what they see. So that it provides equity in learning, because all your students are starting with at the same level of background knowledge and expectation about what's to come. So that can be actually incredibly powerful, and that's a level 2. Level 3, say a candidate has students describe an image of something they created or read something with a voiceover in a digital file and share it with a bigger audience. And at level 4, your students might be using the Google suite of apps to collaboratively create a digital product. Or, for example, using stop animation to explain a concept. Stop animation is fantastic. There are free apps. There's one really powerful, awesome one for iPad called iMotion. Students at any age, any level can use stop motion to demonstrate concepts, to tell a story. It's amazing. Some common uses are at younger grades, having kids make videos with Lego figures. There's this entire subculture of people who use that to tell stories. And claymation is, of course, based on stop motion animation. So, oops, this is a really small example of what that looks like. So the way you create a stop motion animation is just basically set up your device. Also works on smartphones. And the app will tell you when to click and take a picture. And then you're just moving your clay image just the tiniest bit each time. I've done this with kindergartners actually, with Play-Doh, and it's pretty phenomenal. But students at upper grades could use this to demonstrate all kinds of scientific concepts. Again, they can tell stories. They could demonstrate how something works, a natural process. Like I always think of a cell. I'm not sure why. It just seems like a natural fit to illustrate how something works in nature. So again, it's a lot easier than it looks. And students are creating and doing all the critical thinking that goes along with that and with preparing something for an audience. So the TPA, the Cal TPA, also is one of your required video clips for cycle 2, is showing student use of technology that supports or demonstrates their content-specific learning. So again, the bar is pretty high, but we have a way of thinking about it. So we're making good choices with even very simple tools that can make a big impact in what students are able to do. Okay, so let's think quickly about what if I teach the littlest children. And I love this quote from the National Association of the Education of Young Children about, they have a beautiful white paper on tech use in schools for the littlest kids. And they say, provide a balance of activities and programs for young children. Recognizing technology and interactive media can be valuable tools when used intentionally with children to extend and support active, hands-on, creative, and authentic engagement with those around them and with the world. And some of the apps that we talked about really briefly definitely fall into this description of meaningful, age-appropriate tech integration. Okay, one example of another free app is called Seesaw. I see it in lots of schools, but you can see here that they have activities ready for you to look at that are appropriate for pre-K and first grade. And it goes on up from there. It also works on smartphones and any tablet or any computer. So that opens up possibilities for teachers and how they use it. It offers student portfolios. So a student has sort of an account where their work goes. They can take pictures, they can add voiceovers, they can draw on top of them. It's pretty amazing. And families can easily join, and you can set that up at back to school night or what have you. They just scan a QR code. There are lots of safety and privacy features built in because it's made for schools and it's made for teachers. So here's an example, again, just from the website, using it for formative assessment and giving children feedback on their work. So the child takes a picture and you take it from there and you can do any number of things with it. This is a paid app, but it is so popular, I decided I had to add it. You can get a free trial for 21 days, but we don't want our students trying something brand new just for the sake of using a piece of technology. But I'm going to encourage my own students to play with it, to use it, not necessarily for the TPA, because once you start to think about what's possible, your mind starts to open up and you think about, wow, it would be so amazing if an app would do this or that. And then you can often Google it or stumble across it and find that that app exists. So it's really a matter of diving into the field and seeing what's possible. So this is, again, is super, super popular because it allows children to tell their own stories in their own voice, with their own drawings or photographs they've taken. It's amazing. Okay, and so though you can see there are some options for the littles, but what if your school site has very limited tech? And that means that you have a few options. Your candidate can set up a center with just one device and a task to be accomplished in small groups, possibly. That's probably optimal. If you were to do stop motion animation, that would totally work. That is a task that is inherently collaborative because it works so much better with more than one person. Students can bring their own devices, especially at your upper grade levels. And students can use the candidate's device. So if that would open up a whole new world. So there are workarounds if limited tech is a problem. So here's an example of another really popular free app that is, again, designed for school use. So there's privacy built into it and the teacher has a lot of control over what is displayed. So it's very simple. You set up a class literally in minutes and the teacher posts a question. What do you think about this? And you provide an image or what have you. And then students, when they're presented with this, literally, they're just going to click a button that looks exactly like this, and they can talk for 90 seconds. And you can say a lot in 90 seconds We use this in our program, so we use it in higher ed, and I don't see why you couldn't use it across grade levels, because again, it is so very simple. The students can respond to any sort of prompt that you want to give them, or they could do a mini book review, or talk about part of something, and then the next person talks about the next part of something, as in a piece of literature. But the beautiful thing is that student voices are there, and that just changes the whole equation when we're talking about presenting learning. So this is what you end up with in Flipgrid. You get a grid of all the little videos that were shot by students. So we've talked about a lot, and let's sum it up if we can. So when you plan as a teacher, teachers do so much planning. It always helps to think about beginning with the end in mind. We have to know where we're going, and before we think about how we're going to get there. Are we going to Disneyland, or are we going to the grocery store? Two very different things. And so these are obviously the questions, simplified, greatly simplified, but the TPA is asking our students to think this way, as I'm sure all of the programs are as well. Who am I teaching? What do they already know? What do I, as a teacher, want them to know or be able to do? And how well do I want them to be able to know it or do it? And how will I know that they have achieved or demonstrated the learning goal? And what activities will foster that result? So when you're planning your activities, it's almost the last step. So again, this is like PIC-RAT, and it's like the Rubric. We're trying to think about technology as a part of the whole painting. And it's not something we start with, it's something that's down here. And actually, you can use it at any of these steps that are highlighted in gray. But what activities are going to get me and my students to my learning goal? So that's the end of what I have to offer you today. At the bottom of the slide, you will see a link to this presentation. If for some reason you would want to refer to it again, please feel free to do so. Also, my email. I'm happy to answer questions and help in any way that I might be able to. There's 2 more slides that just contain resources. And again, I was almost hesitant to add them because they can make your head spin and make you feel overwhelmed. But there's some great teacher blogs on how people use Flipgrid and how people use Desmos in areas besides math. And then here's a resource on tech tools for formative assessment. So Plickers is a one-to-many tool, not one-to-many, but it's one tool because teacher prints out these cards, and every student has one. And depending on how they turn the card, they're indicating an A, B, C, or D answer. And the teacher has an app on their smartphone, and students can use it at any level, simply lift their card in the right orientation to show what they're thinking. And the teacher scans the room, and the app automatically gives them data on how the students are doing in terms of understanding. And I think you can display that for students as well, so that they can see what's happening in the room. So that's a lot of information, but I hope people will find it helpful. Again, I'm happy to answer emails. So back to you, Dr. Croy, and thanks again for letting me talk. Thanks. Oh, I think you have to unmute.
All right. Thank you. And Jane, did you have something else, or are you just telling me to unmute myself? You can see I needed this technology lesson too. So thank you, Jane, for taking time today to think about technology and beyond, and really help all of us move from a passive to a creative, transformative approach to technology. This will be posted on the multiple subject, single subject CTC website. And I want to thank Jake Schuler for being our guru today of technology. We couldn't have done this without you, Jake. So thank you for your participation in this and your magic touch on technology. We hope you found this helpful. And again, let us know if you have other subjects and topics that you would like for us to cover. And perhaps we'll bring Jane back with more technology in the future. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.